So community-based social marketing is a concept, it is really marketing, but it's really focused on behavior change and specifically fostering sustainable behavior. So a lot of marketing is directed at, more of a capitalist outcome, getting you to buy something. But there are some similarities in terms of how we persuade people to put value on certain things, including behaviors. So it's seen, and the brains behind this is Douglas Mackenzie Moore. He's a Canadian, and he lives on Salt Spring Island, and he continues to teach this course, both in person and online. And this is his well-known book, Fostering Sustainable Behavior. You'll see this, basically everything that I'm going through today is from this book. There's some examples of my own work or the city's work that I've included in here, but for the most part, this is Doug's stuff. And so this is kind of the steps that Doug would say we should take each and every time. And of course, in theory, that would be amazing. In reality, we can't always, so it's somewhat aspirational. Certainly in the work I do with the city, we for major campaigns, like the BYO campaign, for example, we do try to go through these steps. And they really, depending on the resources and time we have, we may not be able to dive into each of them as much as we'd like. So the first one that's really important is, what is it you're trying to target? What is the behavior you're looking to influence or change? And so this part of it is a bit technical, and so it takes a bit more time and to understand these concepts. So I'm going to just really fly over them quickly. But behaviors can be divided into divisible or non-divisible. So it's important, if you're looking to influence a specific behavior, that it's non-divisible as much as possible. So an example like that is, conserve electricity. That might be a behavior or that you'd like someone to adopt, but it is divisible because you could do that in a number of different ways. Maybe your campaign is focused more on turning off a specific light. That would be a non-divisible behavior. So just to kind of get you a sense, you got to kind of work through what is it you're trying to get to. Also, end state. Will engaging in this behavior result in the desired outcome? And so an example that's easy to understand is if you buy a programmable thermostat. Let's say your campaign was focused on incentivizing people to buy these thermostats because they can result in energy conservation. But that's not end state, because are they actually going to go home and install it? Even if they install it, are they actually going to effectively program the thermostat to match their occupancy patterns, etc.? So end state is another consideration. This is what I would sort of walk through with you guys normally, but I just don't have enough time. But this gives you a sense of, sort of illustrates how you'd maybe walk through that consideration in your campaign development. This is where it starts to get a bit more fun. Identifying barriers and benefits. And so, barriers and benefits are really, really important in terms of understanding how we may nudge people towards the desired behavior. And so there's a number of ways you're going to do this, and typically you do them all. Literature review, like looking and understanding what work has already been done in this space. Sometimes it's really effective just to observe people. Be out in the community or, at the workplace or wherever the behavior is you're looking to influence. You might want to use focus groups, get people who engage in that behavior one way or the other to kind of give you some insight and ground truth some of that literature review. And the surveys are also useful in that way as well. But there's a couple do's and don'ts around uncovering barriers and benefits. You want to make sure, again, that you're clear on your mandate. So that's why understanding the behavior, making sure that you've gone through that sort of technical work of understanding that the behavior you're looking to understand the barriers and benefits about is, non-divisible and end state. You want to understand the factors that differentiate those who've adopted the desired behavior from those who have not. So that's where that focus group or survey work and the questions that you include in that can help uncover what distinguishes those scenarios. And of course, you got to be careful about your preconceived beliefs and biases. We all have them, and so when we're trying to take a bit more of a social psychology approach to these types of campaigns, we need to try to make sure we're not baking ourselves and our beliefs into the process. And those focus groups and surveys can help with that as well. Of course, some things you don't want to do, you don't want to base it on a hunch, okay? And a lot of times we fall in love with our ideas, right? Like, oh man, that's the best idea ever. And so you might decide, oh, let's just skip barrier and benefit. I talked to a couple friends, they all think this is amazing, we should just do this. Clearly there's a risk there, especially if you're going to invest significant resources and time into the campaign. You want to make sure you've cleansed it of any of that stuff. And then there's a few other things here. You know, I think the last bullet is really around, you know, being careful you're not greenwashing, you know, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Some of these issues are really, really serious, and so you got to be somewhat careful about that and respect that. Oh boy. Okay. This is where it gets fun. Everybody loves to, you know, the solutions are the best part, and we often want to jump to the solutions. And even today, you're going to find that I was here last year, and we wanted to get into the solutions because we wanted to be able to pitch the solution, not necessarily the process. But it's really important to, when you're thinking about your ideas today, is to bake in the process or think a little bit about what you may or may not already know or the limitations of your knowledge. But it's okay, as long as the process that you're pitching and you have a vision for the outcome, you know, but you're going to be clear that the process will help you sort of come to that outcome more informed. So let's see if I can, okay. So this is the part where you got to wrap your head around it. In terms of CBSM strategy, it's about addressing two behaviors simultaneously. You want to encourage the behavior you want to encourage, and the behavior to be discouraged. So you need to kind of understand, okay, what is it we're trying to encourage? What is it we're trying to discourage? And you're kind of simultaneously addressing those. And I'll walk you through what that might look like. All right, so for example, the behavior to be encouraged, you're going to try to find ways, strategies, tactics to decrease the barriers to achieving that desired behavior. And you also want to increase the benefits, okay? Likewise, for the behavior you're looking to discourage, you're attempting to increase the barriers and reduce the benefits. And so we can kind of give you one way of showing you what that might look like for a simple example. If you're trying to encourage cycling, for example, and again, that's not a non-divisible behavior, so, but nonetheless, maybe you could say this is cycling to work. Some of the barriers that we'd like to reduce is the risk and danger, the sort of the sweat that might come along, so maybe that's showers at the workplace, as well as security concerns. Also, you're going to want to promote the benefits, mental health, physical health, save money on gas, good for business, all those kinds of things. You're going to want to make sure that those are well understood. And of course, the behavior you're trying to dissuade is driving. So in that case, there may be ways of institutionally, you know, some of these might be beyond our capabilities, but as a society, we can introduce carbon taxes. There's this, as a city, we can look at parking fees, parking inventory, traffic calming, all sorts of engineered solutions. And then the benefits, you know, we want to reduce that. There is a lot of free parking, convenience, maybe congestion could help. So it's, you can kind of get an appreciation of what you're trying to do here. And then ultimately what you're looking to do is to find that right balance. The benefits must exceed barriers to basically achieve sustainable behavioral change. And so that's kind of what we're looking to try to do in understanding those barriers and benefits. And then once you've got a good understanding of that, now you're going to get to the tools and tactics and strategies to achieve that outcome. And so that's where it gets really fun. So just to give you a quick snapshot where we are so far, we've kind of taken these first few steps. We've selected an end state non-divisible behavior. We've identified and prioritized the barriers and benefits that we're going to look to address. And then we now get to start thinking about the strategy. So how are we going to do that? And so that's where, you know, you're looking at those tools and tactics, which we'll go through now. So there's 6 or 7, I guess, and I usually include an 8th. I didn't include it today, but these are sort of the types of tools and tactics that Douglas Mackenzie Moore focuses on. So commitment, social norms, social diffusion, prompts, tailored communication, incentives, and convenience. We'll walk through each of them. Did I skip something? No. Okay. I don't use that level of fine motor movement ever, so that's very hard for me. So there's an example here for a commitment, and many of you may have done this. Taking a pledge, is one form of a commitment. But in some of the research that's been done in California neighborhood, virtually all the residents who were asked to place a large and ugly and obtrusive "drive carefully" sign on their front lawn declined. They're like, no thank you, that's ugly. Even though they had concerns about the speed of traffic going through their neighborhood. And yet 76% of those asked in kind of in another neighborhood in the study agreed to place the same sign in front of their lawn. And so why such a difference? Well, the 76% group had previously accepted a request to display a small Drive Smart sticker on their window. And so what this is getting to here, if I can go, is, why does this have such a difference in this case? And so agreeing to a small request often alters the way people perceive themselves. So there's some psychology that's getting in here. And through a process of self-perception, they come to view themselves as someone, as a type of person who supports the desired or target behavior. So when asked later to comply with a larger request, there's a strong internal pressure to behave consistently, because consistency is an important character trait. And so you're consistent, you're honest, you have integrity. If you're inconsistent, you're untrustworthy and unreliable. So some psychology here. Start with a small commitment can lead to larger commitments, which I think things like Go by Bike Week and so on sort of use some of that thinking to get people to commit to a small or relatively small act with the hope that it will lead to bigger acts. So some checklists for the using commitment tactic, emphasize written over verbal. If you can get it a written pledge or a written commitment tends to have a stronger impact. Public commitments, that's where the BYO campaign that we have done, it's not like necessarily posting your name, but you are sort of representing your neighborhood. If you commit to reducing the use of certain containers and water bottles, etc., it'll be on a map representing our city. You can look for group commitments like we did with our idling reduction campaign in the city of Kamloops here with Parks crew arborists there. And there's a few other things. You don't want to use coercion. That's important, okay? These are meant to be commitments that people are willing to make on their own. They might be nudged, they might be encouraged, but you don't want to, hold something over them to do it. The one there on the bottom, this is my last gas car. I had that sticker on my previous car for several years, and it died before I expected it to, and really before I was ready to go full body electric. But this sticker really, all my friends knew about it, so I was determined to. I ended up getting a plug-in hybrid electric. That was the best I could do with all the considerations, but it definitely had an influence on the way I thought about my purchase. Now, Jesse mentioned this in one of his projects earlier, and social norms, social diffusion is also a really important, powerful tool or tactic. So it gets a little technical here, but injunctive norms provide information on what behaviors are approved or disapproved of. So these are the norms that we either accept or don't accept. So example, when people observe someone picking up litter, they are less likely to litter themselves. So if you've ever been by an adopt a road, you're not likely to be like, drop it right there, right? So a descriptive norm indicates which behaviors are normally engaged in. So this is a sort of a difference here. So for example, where people are more, like this has been done through experiments and so on, that people are more likely to litter when a parking lot is littered. Now I think about a movie theater and a hockey rink, we see that happening big time in that scenario. Another example, injunctive norm, is when people observe someone ignore litter, they are more likely to ignore litter themselves. So we're very social creatures. And likewise, when a parking lot is litter-free, people are going to be less likely to litter. So there's opportunities to leverage that. So the example that Jesse mentioned, was it a healthy landscape or something to that effect? So if there is a sign, also this is a commitment, and a prompt, and also a norming effect, because now people are going to go by and see, oh, this is a desirable situation that is being, someone is committed to, and may very well change their thinking about it. So making it noticeable, best if it's present at the time and place that the target behavior is expected to occur. Generally better to use norms to encourage people rather than to shame them or discourage them. So a little bit of shaming now and then doesn't hurt, but generally speaking, people want to align themselves with success or with positive behavior, not be disciplined into doing otherwise. You got to be careful using descriptive norms, and an undesirable behavior is common. So when we introduced the zero waste containers to Sandman Center, Big challenge, right? Because we were trying to promote a behavior or outcome that was inconsistent with the practice, you know, and just dropping your popcorn thing is just the thing, and then the whole system is set up to deal with that. So, you know, that was a tricky one. And yeah, whenever you can, you know, a little bit of praise never hurts. People, we do like, you know, we're very predictable. We like to be stroked a bit. But example of one thing, simple way of showing this is you have two ways. If, say, in a turn off the light campaign, you could say 27% of employees, we would have seen this through observation or surveys, do not turn off the lights when they leave the office. We can do better. Let's turn it off. Okay, that's generally not going to be as well received or have as much impact as if you say 73% of employees turn off the lights when they leave the office. Thank you for being a power smart superhero. Okay, simple example, but this is what this checklist is getting to here. Whoa. Social diffusion, it has some similarities, but it's certainly a little more to do with leveraging your social networks. And so, you know, here's an example which would motivate you more to act. You can see I made this before our newspapers went away, unfortunately, but a generic ad in the local paper or a social media page liked by friends that you trust. So this is it gives you a little insight into what social diffusion looks like. We've also seen studies show how there's the cluster effect around solar panels. I'm not going to try to walk through the chart on the right, but basically what the science has shown is that when that they start to cluster, so the distribution of solar panels is not just distributed across the population equally. There's clusters around where there has been early adopters of that desired behavior. Social diffusion, it gets into the social diffusion theory. Many of you have heard of this. Really, it's key and important to know which segment of the target audience you're wanting to focus on. Are we looking to focus on the early adopters? Maybe not. They're already doing it. On the same hand, but that being said, you want to make sure though that you're leveraging those early adopters. So when 15 to 20% of a population has adopted a behavior, you sort of achieved critical mass, and then you can start to see much more expedient adoption. And so we think of, well, I'll get that in a second, but oftentimes our tendencies, we want to focus on the laggards. You know, if only these people would do the right thing in terms of the sustainable behavior. But the challenge is they're really hard people to move. You're better to kind of start through the early adopters into the early majority or the opportunists. Most of us are opportunists. We want to do the right thing. There's just a certain number of barriers or benefits that aren't clear to us yet. So a couple of examples we've used here locally is Electric Avenue, and I'm really proud of the folks in this room who are part of this. We've done this for 6-7 years now. It really speaks to this. The early adopters love their EVs. They had to champion them. They had to be willing to be the pioneers and willing to have extension cords to get over the Coquihalla and all that stuff in the early days, right? But they also love to talk about their experience. And so we invited them to the Electric Avenue, which Hot Night in the City agreed to work with us to have this new piece. And we just stepped out of the way. And people were so curious. They love cars coming to this show. But they could talk, instead to a salesperson, they were able to talk to a real life Kamloopsian who made who adopted this technology early. And so this really helps with this social diffusion. In fact, what we're knowing we're successful now, we're having a hard time getting those early adopters to still come out. Volunteer fatigue, get it. However, it's become more mainstream, and most sort of mainstream folks don't have that same fervent passion, and so it's harder to get them to spend 8 hours on hot concrete to talk about their car, because it's just a car, right? But so yes, and so we've leveraged that in a few ways with some of the videos that Rena and others have participated in with us in trying to spread that social diffusion. Prompts are really, really important, and they're really simple. They're visual aid or auditory aid, which remind us to carry out an activity that we might otherwise forget. We're busy people. It can be effective for one time, or for repeated things like bringing a bag and waste reduction. So it's, as Doug Mackenzie Moore says, it's not to change attitudes or increase motivation. The prompt itself is simply to remind us to engage in an action that we already are predisposed to do. And so we have a couple of examples how we've used that in Kamloops. We had the BYO business, the bring your own. Nice seeing some businesses doing this. They're on their own now. You may have noticed more grocery stores with their own BYO campaigns. We had our turn your key, be idle free, which was a window cling to go up on your windshield. These are all intended to be prompts. Some important things about prompts is they should be noticeable, of course. They should target a specific behavior, ideally non-divisible and state. The prompt should be self-explanatory and simple to understand, using graphics or text or symbols. Should be presented as close in time and space as possible to where you expect the targeted behavior to occur. And then again, it's meant to be more encouraging rather than discouraging. And we see some on our carts, for example. Creative messaging is really important. So this is another important tactic. In the art of persuasion, we have to compete, these messages have to compete in a world full of very, very sophisticated and well-funded marketing campaigns to get you to buy things. So this is really important that we integrate these same tactics. So vivid, personal, concrete, know your audience, because again, you maybe not be able to, it's not everyone. Are you talking to the laggards? Are you talking to the opportunists? Who are you speaking to? Because the message will be very different. Ideally, have the message delivered by an individual who has credibility with your audience. So for example, with the mixed success zero waste efforts at Sandman Center, we did get the Kamloops Blazers to fully support us in putting together a video where they were basically showing and talking to the folks in the audience, their fans, what the expected and desired behavior is. Vivid, beautiful, National Geographic. That's a very, very, it looks like an iceberg, but then you realize it's a plastic bag. That just has a very strong, provocative impact. So yeah, a couple of things. Frame message to indicate what is lost by not acting rather than what is saved by acting. Don't use threatening messages, or usually it's a couple of actions to remedies. So it's not only make them aware, but also make sure they understand how. Clear, specific, integrate personal goals or community values. And certainly when we went through the CCAP development, we really thought about community values and personal goals. It's important to understand how to use those to have some influence. So the third video in our EV Emotive BC funded campaign is we're looking to use the F-150 Lightning with maybe an electric dirt bike in the back and have kind of explore that story a bit. Because there's a certain segment in our population that would align with their community values. What's most important to them is to get in their trucks and get into the backcountry. Well, let's show them that this can be done in a zero emissions format as well. So modeling behaviors, enhanced social diffusion. People can talk about what they've done and discuss it and share it. So I just shared the recipes with my wife and all her book clubs. So I'm sure it's tearing up the internet right now. Personal contact is always really good, and feedback right away at the individual and community level. So this is a simple one, but these really cool water filling stations you're seeing, they have a simple counter on them that just basically gives you some feedback right away that by you using this machine, you've reduced the number of water bottles that end up in our landfill by a certain amount. Incentives that have worked, there's a few examples here. I was going to point out the average household water consumption in Kamloops decreased 20% after the introduction of universal water metering. So this is an incentive. There used to not be an incentive. It was a flat rate. There was really no inherent incentive to use less water. Now there is. You pay for what you use. There's different tiers, so it tends to promote conservation. And there's a few other examples there. Certainly, one of the earliest ones we all would have remembered, especially the ones in the back of that station wagon, is the introduction of a deposit system for our beverage containers and so on. So incentives, for them to work, they've got to be, the size of the incentive. What's going to move somebody? What is the value of it relative to the ask? And certainly you don't want to over-incent, because that is called found money, and it can basically provide diminishing returns on your investment. Again, closely pair the incentive and the behavior. For example, the 5 cent or 10 cent per plastic bag, it's right at the till. It's happening right there. The incentive is right there for you. Make it visible. Use incentives to reward positive behavior. This is a problem we have, is the introducing and then removing incentives. So we're really advocating on behalf of the city for the province, the Better Homes program and the various incentives that they need to be sustainable. So make sure that they're designed in a way that we can sustain them, because we put a lot of effort into marketing them and getting awareness on them, and then they're gone. And that can't happen. That's not going to be as successful. Convenience, I'm not going to have enough time to go into this, but I think convenience, as we know, convenience has probably undermined a lot of our sustainable practices in our community or in our society over time. Plastic bags were convenient, as opposed to alternatives, etc. So trying to figure out how to integrate convenience is really important. I'm going to just have to keep moving on here. I think this is the final one. So when developing a community-based social marketing strategy, you want to select tools based on barriers and benefits, and you need to understand what those are. Maximize the effectiveness of the tools. You might need to do some trials, pilots, focus groups. Tackle several barriers with one strategy if you can, and then use pilots to test one strategy against the other. So some examples here: if the barrier that you've perceived or come to understand is a lack of motivation to do the sustainable behavior, desired behavior, well, maybe you need commitments, norms, and incentives. They may work. Forget to act, well, prompt. Lack of social pressure, norms. Lack of knowledge, communication and social diffusion, and then structural barriers. It could be convenience, because that could be at a system, a transportation network level, or it could be at a bag level. So there we go. Now, once you're through, you get through all these steps, you pilot your strategy, tools and tactics, tweak and refine, and you're ready for broad scale implementation. And here's another example. You notice I mentioned reference to seatbelts and firefighters. There's a lot of public service announcements. We have a lot of rich history of really effective behavior change campaigns that have been successful in our society. So we need to find ways to continue to find that success. Conversion to metric, that didn't go quite as good as we'd like, but lots of them have. Most people wear seatbelts now. Most people are fire smart, at least when it comes to their cigarettes, as they weren't in the 70s. So anyways, that's a lot jammed into a very short time, and thank you for the extra couple minutes I got, and happy to answer any other questions you have. Thank you very much.